Now, I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Igor Yuzefovich, Concertmaster for BBC Symphony. And then he will discuss with us the evolving purpose and pathways based on his experience as a concertmaster and his stay in UK ever since he left Singapore. Mr. Igor
Hi, everybody.
Yuzefovich.
Thanks, Mingxi, and thank you, Bernard, for that really insightful talk, because this is absolutely you've hit the nail on the head as far as what needs to be happening in as we look towards the future, and as we look towards the next generation of artists coming up. Things obviously can't continue in the same way that they've always been assumed to be done. Um, it's also quite reassuring to be having these kinds of talks, because that, to me, it signifies that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that perhaps we are now that we're looking back at at everything that has happened, perhaps we are going to come out of this soon, and we're going to come out stronger and wiser. And that really is a very positive sign to have after so many months of just this recurring um, Groundhog's Day in a way. Things in the UK, and I think things in Europe, everyone, of course, is very well aware of what is going on in different parts of the world. But obviously, things here have been a bit harder in the arts field, I think, than perhaps in some other places. We're a much bigger region that we have to deal with, and we were certainly quite late to the party to get things handled. And this is certainly not the place to get into political discussions, but I think as a result of this, you know, the health issue aside, so many of the fields that we're in suffered greatly. And the arts, the tourism industry, so many of us freelancers, or my colleagues, literally have been just kind of sitting idle for the most part of the last year. And I saw a lot of innovation happening right off the bat, right at the beginning of this. I think we all saw the videos going up online, the collaboration videos, and where everyone was kind of rushing out to buy recording equipment and try to create recording studios in their houses, and thinking, well, this is fine. We'll just continue what we've always done, except we'll do it in our house, and people will appreciate it just as much as they always have. And I think it was quite clear when that peak hit very soon after, when we realized that our sort of entry level equipment that we've bought, and our maybe second or third cheapest interfaces, it just wasn't up to par. It wasn't going to create the type of content that we were so used to being able to do in person. And of course, needless to say, the amount of time that went into putting these videos together, putting these recordings together, and editing, and trying to learn all this stuff on the fly. It's an incredible task. And so you saw a lot of ensembles, a lot of people dive into this at first, but in a way we were still just continuing what we had done before. And so what Bernard had just mentioned, this idea of innovation, this idea of doing something but figuring out why we're doing this, that only started to become apparent, at least to me, just in the last few months, when we went through these periods of, maybe this is a nice break, maybe this is I can treat this as a chance to just relax a little bit, maybe, and put the violin away for a few weeks, something that I've probably never had a chance to do in my life since I was 5 years old. I can't think of a time when I could put my instrument down and not pick it up for 3-4 weeks at a time. um, it was something that I think I almost needed to do to kind of come out on the other end. um, because it made me think about why I do what I do. Yes, I've got a job, I've got a position, and all this stuff, and I travel around the world, and we all perform. But I think after a certain time, uh, we often blur that line between this being a passion of ours and this being a job of ours, and it becomes it becomes more of a job. It's just something that we do, and it becomes more of a routine in some ways. When we have a whole season planned out of rehearsals and concerts, you know, a mountain of different repertoire to go through, there's often not enough time to really give it, make it to be your passion in a way. It is, at some point, it is a job. So this reset, this refresh, I think has been really beneficial, and it made me realize that my whole life as an artist, my motivation was often based on this pressure that we've always had. We've had pressure since we were kids. Prepare for lessons, prepare for exams, prepare for recitals, um, learn a piece in the next month. Um, there were always assignments given to us, and so we reacted by motivating ourselves to do that work, and we were able to achieve results. But perhaps we never really had the time to ask why. Why are we learning this piece? Why are we doing this? And so, without this pressure, when it just disappeared, last March when we got the email from here in the UK, and it said basically everything's shut down, everything's canceled. That pressure was gone, and with it, unfortunately, was the motivation. And so it took a while, to be perfectly honest. It took a while for that motivation to come back, and I think when it did come back, it came back in a much more pure way. I actually wanted to go and practice for no reason, for no recital, for no concert, for no rehearsal, for no under no pressure. And that kind of work was so refreshing for me to do. I realized I was listening to myself differently. I was doing everything that we tell our students to do, which is really incredible because, when we teach, this is exactly how we want to teach. This is what we want them to do when they're practicing. We want them to just be a better musician, and yet we don't find ourselves doing that very often. So, in that sense, this is probably the positive that you could take back from this past year. Um, if you look back at it, would you do things differently? Of course. And if somebody had a crystal ball last March and said you're going to have a year off, and essentially it has been a year off. Where I was just saying we're heading back into work next week for my first rehearsal with the orchestra since December. In December we had 2 weeks that we managed to kind of squeak in between our lockdowns, and so if somebody said you're going to have a year, then I could sit down, I could make a plan, and I could have I could kind of go back to this way that I've been used to, which is I have a schedule, I have a deadline, I have a scheduled holiday that I'll give myself, and then I'll have a deadline by which I need to be prepared. And there's that pressure again, and then there's that sort of motivation that's coming back in. Um, so the point of this, I suppose, is that I think it's incredibly important to try to find ways for this motivation to be not from the pressure that we have to prepare for something, but for this motivation to really be from within, to really truly be an artist who wants to do something because that's what they want to do, not because it's expected of them to do it. not because they have to do it by a certain deadline. And that, I'm pretty sure that will make all of us much more honest artists and much better artists. We'll be doing it for the right reasons, really. Um, it's a little bit difficult for us orchestral musicians, because I used this example the other day. Is the a painter who lives on a deserted island. They have their canvas, they have their paints, and they paint. And to me, I think they would be just as happy painting this painting and just leaving it there on the island. Whereas as a musician, I feel like if I just play for myself in my living room, it that doesn't quite that doesn't do it for me, because I thrive on that connection with the audience. I thrive on that live um, live interaction, that energy, that walking out on stage. A painter doesn't walk out on stage and begin to paint. They present a finished product to a gallery, and we walk around and then we use that product to inspire us and to make us feel in a certain way. um, Much like somebody puts on a recording, I suppose, and the recording inspires them or does something to them. So we musicians who create art in a live setting in front of people, we need those people in order to be able to do what we do. Um, and so it's it's going to be very interesting when we do head back on stage, and when we finally, hopefully within a very very near future, when we can have audiences in the hall, even 45 people, whatever it is, 5 people, I don't care, but we're going to have people who are there, and they're going to be hungry to hear that live sound. That's really exciting to us now. I think we've rounded that corner where we can almost see this happening in the near future. And from my colleagues that I've spoken to, that's really what we're looking forward to at this point. We're excited for that connection. And I'm really hopeful that after this sort of clearing of the pressures and the 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 resulting motivation, that we can in fact come back on stage and do things for the right reasons, and we can see how that's going to change the way that we play and the way that we create what we do. And I think it's probably a bit too soon to think, how has this year changed us, because we are evolving. We're now starting that process of doing things differently, and it's going to take some time for us to truly look back and say, well, how is this different than what I've done something in the past? But it's certainly an exciting journey, and it's very good to have these opportunities to start discussing this and seeing all the changes. So those are my thoughts on that.